Following World War II and the start of the baby boom in the United States, 1950 was a time of hope and prosperity. It was also a census year, in which everyone living in the United States was counted and documented. In April 2022, these census records for more than 150 million people will be made publicly available for the very first time, so we can all get a new glimpse of life back in 1950. Details such as place of residence, age, gender, race, education, occupation, income, and more were captured by diligent census workers. Starting on April 1st, 2022, you can find your family in the 1950 census and help others find theirs. See what your family was doing and discover details that may have been lost or forgotten. Who will you find? Visit FamilySearch.org/1950 census to get started.
Welcome back to the RootsTech main stage. This year, something special is happening in the United States that only occurs once every 10 years, the release of a new census.
That's right. The 1950 United States Federal Census will be released next month on April 1st, a full 72 years after it was originally taken.
This census includes a record of every household living in the United States at the time and is a source of rich information for anyone who's interested in learning more about their family.
We're going to spend some time with leaders at Ancestry and FamilySearch to learn more about the 1950 census.
I'm so excited about the 1950 census. I am so excited to learn more about my family in this time period. It was a really interesting time for my family. My dad had just graduated from high school not too long before that. And it's a little murky about where he was. He's not too forthcoming. You know, at college, he had a little military stint in there. So I'm really excited to see exactly what was he doing. Where was he living, you know? What was his circumstances in 1950? My grandfather, who I never knew and had passed away quite a long time before me, he was in between different jobs. So I'm really excited to see exactly where he was in this place and time, which is why it's so fun to get this window, right? Into our family, into their circumstances, their employment, and where are they living, who are they with in this time period. So I'm really excited about this sneak peek, into my family's life in this time period.
Yeah, so my family, my dad was born in 1949. So he will just be 1 year old on the census, which I think is kind of fun. My mom is gonna miss the census by like 3 months. But she does have an aunt who, rumor has it, may have been in Panama. And we aren't sure exactly what she was doing there or who she was with. And Panama was, of course, a US territory at the time. So I'm hoping there might be a little snapshot of her and what she's doing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
My great-great-grandmother came from Germany.
Came from Ireland.
From Nova Scotia.
They moved to New York City.
Moved across the country to Alaska, from Louisiana, and then back to the South.
I would really just want to know about my past.
Welcome to Times Square in New York City. In April of 2022, the National Archives will be releasing the 1950 census for the first time. FamilySearch will provide free public access to these records that include every household in the United States. We're here today asking people who they would like to find in the 1950 census. Do you know of any family members that could have been present in 1950 that might be on those records?
I'm sure all of my grandparents.
Yeah?
So some alive, some have passed on, some I've never met.
Yeah, I think probably my grandfather or my grandmother, both. My grandfather is like 90 years old, so.
Oh, wow. My grandparents.
My great-grandmother on my mother's side, she's kind of a missing person for us. So my great-grandparents came from Ireland to here.
I've been dying to find my great-great-grandmother.
All of my grandparents would have been like middle school age.
My dad, he had some grandparents who were still alive in the 1950s who lived out in California on a ranch.
My grandparents ended up in the news industry.
It just occurred to me, I don't know my great-grandparents' actual names. So, yeah, that'd be a question I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Like, what was my great-grandma's real name?
We have Cherokee, so how far back? I would really just want to know about my past.
It would be curious to see how times have changed, especially for me. So I work in the construction industry, a typically male-dominated field now. It would be very curious to see as a woman back in 1950 what that was like as well. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, so it's so cool because the 1950s census gives us a ton of information on how people were living their life back then. So back then you should be able to see how old your grandpa was, how many kids he had at that time, their ages, what his occupation was, what your grandmother was doing, you know? So it kind of gives you a window, a literal window into your family's life in 1950. That's really cool.
Did you know that the 1950 census also includes 14 people who were or have since become the President of the United States?
That is so cool. In the census, you'll also be able to identify people like Doris Day, Jimmy Stewart, Nat King Cole, Martin Luther King Jr., and other famous figures of the day. But the 1950 census is more than just a list of names. It includes other information about these people that help us tell their stories.
Let's hear Lisa Louise Cook explain how we can discover stories through the 1950 census.
Hello there. I am so happy to be talking to you today. There is an exciting new record collection available that really has the potential to bring new family history discoveries, but you also might find yourself in it. I just love it when genealogical records give us just one more tangible way to connect with our ancestors. We are talking about the 1950 census. So pull up your bobby socks because we're going to get started. The 1950 census is going to help you confirm many things that you probably have already found. I mean, there's nothing better than having another piece of evidence to kind of back things up. But it's also going to provide some new facts and hopefully some clues for further genealogical research, and might even clear some things up that maybe we didn't have quite right. So lots to look forward to. Let's talk about who you're going to find. Now, there are some new things about the 1950 census to be aware of. A lot of this surrounds the Americans abroad. They were not necessarily enumerated in past censuses, but in 1950, they made a real concentrated effort to capture these people. So that means they were enumerating members of the armed forces, crews on vessels at sea, and U.S. government employees and their families living in foreign countries. So if by chance your folks were on the move or fall in one of these categories, you're going to be able to find them this time around the 1950 census. Let's recap our 5 ways to prepare to use the 1950 census. Number 1, go check your family tree, whether it's your database or your online tree. Make a list of the folks that you want to look for. Check out for those gaps in those questions that you have, so that you'll have some research questions. And then number 2 is to look for the family addresses that you can find and start around the house. You'll be surprised sometimes what you can find in your own home or talking to your relatives. You get those addresses, and then number 3, go get the link and download the census form so that you'll have a nice clean copy of it. You can take a look and really read all those descriptions and headers and things. Make sure you understand what the questions are that are being answered. And then number 4 would be to find the enumeration district number and the maps. So even if you're watching this and it's after the index is finished, that's okay. This is still going to help you get the maps. And why not go get that free downloadable high-resolution map that just gives you another view of your family's lives in a particular time frame. I just think that's really cool that they're available. And number 5, understand the records you're looking at. Go download the enumerator instructions. Those are available at the Census Bureau, but I'll have a link for you in the handout, as well as in my show that I mentioned to you, where I can do it with you, and there's a link there as well.
My mom always referred to her grandma as Big Mama.
She's kind of a missing person for us. My grandpa was a coal miner, so he was gone when I was 2.
You don't really hear much about their lives.
Welcome to Times Square in New York City. Have you ever wanted to travel to the past to see what your family was doing at a specific point in time? Well, in April of 2022, the 1950s Federal Census will be released for the first time and made available for free on FamilySearch. This record will give people a glimpse into the lives of their family members. We're here today asking people what they would like to discover about their family in the 1950 census. So if you could take a time machine and go back into 1950 and meet your family, What would you want to learn from them? What questions would you ask them? What experiences would you want to have?
I'm so curious what day-to-day life was like, you know, the little things. Well, I think it'd be really cool to kind of learn more about like the family that came from Ireland and what their experience was like coming over here.
So, yeah, that'd be a question I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Like, what was my great-grandma's real name?
I would just love to see where they were living, what they were doing, where were they working.
I would probably want to meet my grandma.
I guess if I'd want to walk around, see how people lived.
It would be very interesting to see what my mom's parents and their parents were specifically doing.
So my parents live in the same house that my granddad built in like 47. So I would love to see what that house looked like when it was new.
I think I'd probably want to experience drive-in movies.
I love the style of dresses in the 1950s.
Music, also the food.
I am a big literature fan, so just get more into the literature that was out in the 1950s and what they really enjoyed reading.
I think I would just want to go back to my hometown and just experience a day in the life and just walk around and see what all has changed.
I know you could buy a house for like $1 back then, so I'll have a couple of those right now.
So the 1940 census came out, right? And then the Depression, World War II, people were coming home from the war, the baby boom starts. So the 1950 census, even though it's a really recent record, I'm really excited about it because it's gonna help us find people. It's gonna show us what happened in that ensuing decade. You mentioned your dad earlier, like, you know, people going off to school, coming home from the military, lots of mobility in the country at the time, and lots of new babies being born. I think about 30 million babies born in that one decade. So I think the 1950 census, even though it's a recent record, it's gonna give us this really clear snapshot of what was happening in the home at that moment. And I love that about it.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. To me, Ancestry does such a great job of this. You tell a story, right? It's all about storytelling. And this particular record set is about just telling stories, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And that's what's so fun, is it puts a whole family in a place and a time, and also their neighbors. You know, who did they know? Who were they living next to? Who were their friends? And unlock a story.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm so excited about. I know it's the same for you, but we have so many people that come to FamilySearch and they'll type in their own name. They start with themselves.
Yeah.
Or they'll put in their parents, people that they know.
Right.
And sometimes that's a challenge for them. But what I love in the 1950 census is you're gonna find somebody that you know.
Yeah.
You know, you're gonna find that aunt or that grandparent, or maybe for some, themselves, in this census, and be able to unlock those memories and connect from what they know into the past. And this incredible time period you're talking about, of so much change and so much excitement and so much pop culture that's gonna be fun, right? Of all these changes going on in society. So it's gonna be really exciting.
It is. Another reason I love the concept of recent records like the 1950 census, Ancestry did a survey about 2 years ago, and of the people that we polled, a surprising 27% didn't know the names of all 4 of their grandparents.
Yeah.
And so we've got this now in a society where families are fractured and there's some disconnect between some of those generations. Something like the 1950 census, I can type in the name of a parent and now I see them as a child living in the home of my grandparents, and I'm gonna be able to extract that information about them.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's so wonderful that, you know, as you know, and so many of our patrons know, you know, you might find a birth record or a death record, and it's a few people, but there's a whole family, right? It's a whole family together on a street, in a town, right, in a time, place, and so forth. So that, like you said, that connection to the living, to the stories. What was it like? My family all grew up in Brigham City, Utah. That's a small little place. And they were, you know, many of their family members lived next door. You know, they lived next to their grandparents. And there was an uncle just down the street. And so it's not just about finding my own family. I can't wait to kind of back up and look at the whole community.
Yeah.
What was going on in Brigham City in 1950, right? Because, you know, when I've researched my family, my grandparents, as I know you do, so much of their life is also defined by their friends.
Yeah.
And by their relationships. So I'm excited not just to learn about my family, but those connected families that we're gonna find in the 1950 census as well.
Yeah, my family's experience is exactly opposite of yours. Both of my parents were born and raised in Los Angeles.
Oh yeah.
No small city, right?
Yeah.
And lots of mobility around with jobs and moving from place to place. And so for me, it's not just about looking at that 1950 census as that snapshot, but then combining that with city directories and newspapers and other things to help track them through time. Because sometimes they might be a little difficult to find in the census if you're not exactly sure where they're living. People get lost in big cities all the time.
So great. You know, one of the things that we're focused on, I think it's very similar, is this was a period after a lot of immigration as well. And coming into the United States, so many of these immigrant communities, maybe they didn't bring records with them.
Right.
And it's so hard for so many people now to trace back that family that came out of Italy or came out of, you know, somewhere in Latin America. But this census, we can start to find them.
Yes.
Right? Through that mobility that you've talked about, both within the United States and those who came through Ellis Island earlier in the century. So it's to place people in time is so fun.
The 1950 census, like most censuses to that point, was somebody, a census taker, coming into your home, sitting down maybe in your living room or on your front porch with you, asking you really personal questions about your family. And so I'm always amazed at the richness of the information that we actually get out of people. Names, birthplaces, ages, occupations. For some people, there might be information about their military service or where they lived previously. And like you said earlier, it's not just that person that's giving the information to the census taker, they're providing that for the whole family. Which also means sometimes, you know, if dad didn't know exactly how old all the kids were.
Maybe it's not always perfectly accurate, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
New technologies introduced by Ancestry and FamilySearch will make the publication of the 1950 census different than ever before. Let's learn more about how this innovation will help you find your family.
As that enumerator is asking those questions, they're not just getting names and ages and birthplaces. Sometimes they're asking information about employment, they're asking information about military service, about where they lived previously, and all of that information about the entire family tells a story. You get these, and they're on these beautifully fielded forms, right? And so there's some neat things that are coming that we're able to do with that because they're such clean forms with such great fielded information. So there's a really unique thing about the 1950 census that none of the other censuses have had before. It is the very first census that was actually processed by a computer when the information was tabulated originally, which I think is a really great foreshadowing of the fact that FamilySearch and Ancestry are now working together, and for the very first time, we will be using handwriting recognition to index this census. And I'm really excited about the possibility. That means we're going to be able to get this out to people faster as soon as those digital images are available from the federal government on April 1st. We're going to download them. I think we both have plans to upload those images and make them searchable immediately. Then we're going to apply this brand new handwriting recognition technology to read that census. And then we're going to hand it off to you guys, and you guys have a big plan for it as well.
You know, what Ancestry is doing is revolutionary.
Yeah.
We've never seen anything like this in our history, in this industry, right? And for the ability to take, you know, and I remember years ago we would talk about the vision, the dream, right, of someday doing this, and people say, a computer can never read this.
Right.
Maybe print, never handwriting, right?
Yeah.
And yet, as you see how this has evolved, again, we go back to stories. Now we're not just picking up an index anymore, right? Mm-hmm. It's all the information is there. We're able to fully pull all the data off. So the richness of the data now is available to everybody. And that's why it's so, to me, so revolutionary. It's faster. It's going to become incredibly accurate. And we're going to get that, all the data out to people. We are so privileged to partner with you on the 1950 census, bringing the expertise that you have in the handwriting recognition technology. And one of the things that we're really good at is working with volunteers. And we have, as you know, a long history of crowdsourcing and getting just lots of motivated, wonderful volunteers from around the world to engage in this work. And one of the things we've been working on is what we call a review or an improvement system. And what will be really fun, because we'll take that great data that you've created, and then we're going to make it really fun and interesting for people. We have two approaches. One is you can do it on your phone with our Get Involved app. And you can take a look at that information and you'll be able to indicate whether it was done correctly or not, or improve that. The other, of course, is online, and you can see all of the data in context and to be able to review those. And we just think by the combination of having our wonderful volunteers, along with your incredible technology, we're going to create, I think, a revolutionary, transformational product that people are going to be really excited about. Quickly, accurately, telling these great stories. So I think, this is just a vision of what's to come, right?
Yeah.
And we're changing the whole industry. We're changing how people think about family history work.
So Ancestry and FamilySearch have been working together for 30 years on various projects. But this particular thing, the 1950 census, 151 million people enumerated, right? Dozens of fields on these records, and applying handwriting recognition technology to this record set for the very first time. You're right, it's revolutionary, but it's also really exciting, and it's an exciting step forward in our partnership and in what we can do for the entire genealogy community. We're going to get these records out faster. They're going to be more quickly available. They're going to be reviewed by volunteers that are going to make the index more accurate. All of that is just so exciting to me as a genealogist.
So one of the things that's really different about this and really exciting, in the past for our volunteers, when they would come in and index or improve records, is they would kind of get a random batch of records. Maybe they could pick, I want to do Ohio or I want to do Mexico, but kind of a random approach. One of the things that's really fun here is that they can go in and actually find their family in the 1950 census and make sure that their family's been done right. I mean, think how exciting that will be, how motivating for volunteers to say, wait, I can look at my own family. And then what we'd love is we'll go down the street, right? Look at those families next door. Look, maybe you want to adopt that little town or that part of that big city that you were in. So we think it's going to be a lot more meaningful and relevant for the volunteers, right? Because they're going to connect to it. They're going to get in, they're going to make sure, and they have a sense of, of I think, more responsibility to get it right. Because it's people that they really want to make sure are findable and that they can tell their stories. So that's another thing I think that's going to really improve the quality of this for everybody that's going to use it, is because there's more of that connection, right? We're bringing that human connection to people with people they already have known and they love, and they want to go in and make sure that that's been done right. And it's just going to make the whole thing even more exciting, I think, for the consumer. So Krista, we're so excited once again to work with you. You're a world-class organization. I mean, it's just an honor for us, our long history, so much that we've done together, what we learn from each other, right? How we are helping to unlock these stories. And as part of that, we just want to make an invitation together between Ancestry and FamilySearch that we invite as many people as possible to come and participate, to get involved, to take a look at their families and their towns and just make sure that this data is as accurate as possible. We know it's going to be amazing because your technology is just, blows my mind what you're doing. But there's always those elements that we want to go and review. And so, here we are at RootsTech. We're just a few days away, really, for this becoming available.
Yeah.
So we're both our organizations, and I think the whole community is really excited about this, right? And I think a lot of people are saying, well, what's next? How can I get involved? How can we get our hands on this? And as for us, we're so excited because you're gonna download those images. We're gonna do that. You're gonna start running your technology on that. But for everybody else, that's kind of on the back office for them. How do they get involved? Well, I think immediately, as soon as you make that available, to come in, volunteer, as we've talked about, go find your family, go find your town, and start looking at that data. We know that the data that you're gonna be providing is gonna be exceptional. Something like we've never seen before, right? But we always know that there's ways to make that more complete, make it more accurate, and that human touch is so important. And so we just want to make an invitation for everybody watching, and all of your friends, share this out on social media, right? Let's get everybody on this. I think we can crowdsource this. We can get it done so fast. Isn't that one of the things that's exciting, is how quick we can make this data available? So really fast and really accurate is going to help everybody. So please come and join us.
Well, this process sounds both easy and amazing. Reviewing the index could also be a way to serve those communities in which we live or to which we have personal connections.
I think we are all looking forward to the release of the 1950 United States Census coming out April 1st. Visit Ancestry.com or FamilySearch.org to learn more about this records collection. And be sure to join the community effort to review the index by visiting FamilySearch.org/1950 Census to ensure that everyone in the census can be found.